So picture this. The US bombs Iran. Classic American move, right? But then the plot thickens. Uncle Sam, fresh off the bombing, they run and pick up the phone, and guess who they call? Beijing. Yes, Beijing. The request? Hey China, can you tell your buddy Iran not to close the Strait of Hormuz? Because, that would be bad for everyone. You can almost hear the collective eyebrow raise across the globe. This isn't your grandpa's geopolitics anymore.
Secretary, final question here. Do you expect Iran to move to close the Strait of Hormuz to try to disrupt oil transportation across the world?
Well, I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. If they do that, it'll be another terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do it. And we retain options to deal with that. But other countries should be looking at that as well. It would hurt other countries' economies a lot worse than ours.
Are you stupid or something?
For decades, the Strait of Hormuz has been the world's energy jugular. We're talking about a narrow waterway where roughly 20% of the world's oil and a significant chunk of its LNG sails through daily. It's been the ultimate geopolitical leverage point, especially for Iran, sitting right there at the choke. The conventional wisdom, close it, and the global economy tanks, oil prices skyrocket, and everyone feels the pain. But what if some players have found a workaround? After the US strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, and Iran's parliament reportedly approving a plan to close the strait, though the final decision rests with the Supreme National Security Council, the US got a little antsy. Secretary of State Marco Rubio publicly called on China to intervene. His reasoning? China heavily depends on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. He even suggested a closure would be economic suicide for Iran and hurt other countries a lot worse than ours, he said. Interesting take, especially when you consider recent developments.
It would be disastrous. It would be seriously economically cataclysmic if that were to happen. For as long as I've been a journalist, it's been one of those clever things you can say if you're at a dinner party in more peaceful times and you say to someone, the thing to watch out for, the thing to really worry about is if something happens to the Straits of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is this relatively narrow bit of sea that is the entrance way and the exit way for the Gulf. So essentially all of the shipping going in and out of the Gulf, so towards Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, all of these countries, and indeed Iran, has to pass through this relatively narrow point between Iran and I think Oman on the other side. And as such, it is a pinch point. It's a natural pinch point within geography. And there's only a few of these places around the world where so much shipping needs to pass in order for all of the basic stuff that we depend on in our lives to actually kind of get from A to B. About a fifth of the world's oil goes through the Straits of Hormuz on a kind of daily basis. You've got tankers going in and out of there. If they close the straits, in other words, they basically prevent shipping from going in and out, which is what people are talking about here, or mine it so it's impassable, then essentially you're cutting off a massive amount of global energy supply and other things also like fertilizers.
Here's where things get interesting. While the US is wringing its hands over the strait, China has been quietly building its own alternative. As of May 2025, the China-Iran rail corridor is operational. We're talking about freight trains, like the one that left Xi'an, China, and rolled into Iran's dry port. Why is this a game changer? This rail link slashes freight time from a whopping 30 to 40 days via sea to a mere 15 to 18 days by train. It's not just about speed. It's about reducing reliance on coastal freight hubs and, crucially, evading the Strait of Hormuz altogether. It's a strategic bypass, potentially making China far less vulnerable to disruptions in the strait than previously assumed.
China and Iran just finished their railroad, which cuts by more than half the time it takes for Chinese goods to reach Europe and the time it takes for Iranian oil to reach China. Cut it in half. By the simple act of constructing a railroad, you avoid the American Navy at every turn. It's entirely across friendly territory. This connectivity, and the Russians have got a similar set of plans elsewhere. It's a good point, a good antidote that you offer, really.
Now let's talk about who really gets hurt if the Strait of Hormuz goes sideways. For the West, particularly Europe, a significant portion of their energy imports, especially LNG from Qatar, passes through this choke point, while the US itself is less reliant, with only about 7% of its oil imports and 2% of its total oil consumption coming through the strait. A global oil price surge would probably still hit their economies pretty hard, leading to inflation and economic instability. But for China, the picture is different. Over 80% of the oil and LNG transit in the Strait of Hormuz last year was bound for Asia, with China, India, Japan, and South Korea being major recipients. However, with the operational China-Iran railway, China has a direct overland route for goods, including potential energy resources, that bypasses the strait entirely. While a complete closure would still cause global price shocks that would affect China, its direct reliance on the strait for all its energy imports is significantly mitigated by this new infrastructure. This strategic foresight could mean that while the West grapples with severe energy shortages and rampant inflation, China might be in a comparatively better position to weather the storm.
The West just lost control of one of the biggest trade routes on Earth, and nobody's talking about it. Yesterday, Iran officially launched a brand new railway connecting all the way to China. It's called the Iran-China Freight Rail Corridor, and it changes everything. Why? Because instead of cargo ships taking 30 days to move goods, this freight train does it in just 15. That's twice the trade in half the time. And here's the real kicker: the West can't touch it. This railway cuts right through countries that back Iran and China, not the US or EU. So no warships, no blockades, no sanctions interference. The first Chinese train already arrived in Iran yesterday. It's live, it's running, and it completely sidesteps Western power. So yeah, Iran doesn't need the West's permission anymore. And if you're wondering whether this could lead to conflict, it might.
So while the US asked China to play traffic cop in the Strait of Hormuz, China might just be thinking, thanks, but we've got our own train to catch. The operational China-Iran railway fundamentally alters the calculus of a strait closure, at least for China. It highlights a shift in geopolitical landscape where traditional choke points might not hold the same sway for all major powers. The question now isn't just if the strait closes, but who truly feels the pinch. And for China, that pinch might be a lot less painful than some in Washington might imagine.
Breaking news on how the table has turned. After Trump bombed Iran, Iran is now threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz, which will skyrocket gas prices and lead to a global recession. Now USA is panicking, and they decided to beg China to play diplomacy here and talk to Iran because they are allies. Did I hear that wrong? China. Yes, the exact China that America has slapped a 150% tariff on. And also the exact China that America has been calling peasants 2 months ago. So why on earth will China do anything for America? Now watching this news as a Chinese person is insane because I know my people are petty. So the audacity of Trump's administration to ask China to step in now, it's crazy. It's just like you bully someone for months, and now you have caused trouble with someone else, and you ask the person that you have bullied before to help you. We all know that is going straight to voicemail.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another upload. Want even more perks? Consider joining my membership for exclusive emotes, badges, and extra content. Your support means the world. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.